We're just doing some chattage here. I think we're live. You guys see me? Hello? Anybody see? Yeah, nobody's seeing me. Let's see. We've got, oh, Gilbert's here. That's cool. Hey, uh-oh, I got to turn that off. That's already down. How you doing, Gilbert? We are trying to get some stuff together here. If anybody sees me, let me know in the chat because we might be having a little bit of issues here. Yeah, okay, cool. Hey, so here we are. Thank you guys for stopping by, and we have a little bit of an issue because I don't know where David is. I've been looking for him. Maybe you guys seen him in the chat. So I don't know what's going on. How about you, Ken? Do you know where he's at?
I'm not sure what's going on here. I just came in for the day. Look, I thought that I wanted to discuss this new release with you, and I've just kicked David out for a few minutes because I thought we could go over what's going on. But hang on, I've got a phone call. Just let me check this phone call out because, yep. Is this, so this is the Fuji marketing department? You were worried about the Sony A7R IV release, or you were worried they were going to bring out a camera that would challenge Fuji. Well, and they released a what? An A7R IV, yeah. And it has what? It has no 4K 60p. They do realize, Sony do realize that this is 2019, don't they? I mean, it's not 2015. They released 4K 30p. And you were worried they were going to release an A7000 or an A7S III, and they released a camera that no one expected. Aaron, you must be so happy being a Fuji user.
A Fuji user, yes, I am. And Ken, good to have you on the show. Love the tattoos. Always was fond of your tattoos there, buddy. Yeah. Now, what happened? No 60p, no 4K 60p.
Everyone knows that, you know, I have more cameras than God and lenses than God and everything else out there. And you know, and let me just get a little bit closer to the camera here because I just want to get really close to the camera when I do this. But I think Fuji has 4K 60p in their X-T3. I think that could be right.
That is, dude. I think you watch you.
Now, I've just got to, I only wanted to say that because I've photobombed David's thing. I'm just going to hop off now because I think David's going to come back. So if you want to talk for a second.
Yeah, I would love to have David come back. Okay, guys. So we had a special guest, and he's going to go get David, I hope. And it's actually quite interesting because, you know, what's really funny is you were doing all the little perks that he does. I think you watch him a little too much for being a Sony fan, my friend.
I wonder what happened then. I was just out the back there. I don't know what actually happened then.
No, I was just saying, I didn't know if you had your headphones on. You have all the little quirks that he does, and I think you watch him a little too much because I would have never remembered all those little things. That is too funny, man. Okay, so what do you think now that Ken's out of the room? What do you think about the new Sony release? Everybody's excited, right?
Before we do that, let me just see what who's in this chat over here because I'm dying to see. I might put my other glasses on actually so I can see what I'm doing. I can't believe I had a photo bomb in there from Ken. It was unbelievable.
Me neither. When the camera came on, I was like, wow, Ken's in here.
Mavfan is here. Casper's also here. Buster Ball is saying, are Sony doing a week of announcements or wait? We're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. We're going to go through everything. Matthew said, looking forward to watching later. Expecting other releases from Sony. Longrider said, Casper. Oh, he's talking to Casper. So Casper's here. Brett said, morning here in Australia. That camera is $5,400 Australian, believe it or not. Really expensive over here. Aaron obviously is here because we're talking to him. Oreo says, thanks, YouTube, for not warning me about this. Yeah, I know. I don't know what's going on with the YouTube announcements. They're just not coming through. Brett said, yeah, there are a lot of talk about the new A7R IV. Pros and cons, fantastic specs, still no 60p and no full touch screen, and overpriced in Australia. Over 50 changed items for the A7R III and from the A7R III to the A7R IV. Like I said, I think it was quoted at, what was the recommended retail price here in Australia? It was ridiculous. I think it was 5,000.
What was it here? 3,400 or something?
Yeah, it's $5,699. So basically $5,700 Australian. That's nuts. Chris is saying, hello, David. Hot day in Los Angeles. Good day for a Corona. Manuel's also here. Stuart's saying hi as well. David's saying, I saw you for a second. Dana said, I see you. David's missing. Yeah, I know. I was gone. I don't know what happened there. David's audio has a delay. That's interesting. Look, it's Long Riders, buddy. Dave looks like he's just come straight from a nightclub. Aussie Bender. I love it. Don't kill me, David. I love the banana phone. Where's your walking cane, David? Stuff like that. So that's Brett said 4K 60 for the A7S III. Yeah, that's basically it. Michael said Basement Ken from the dungeon down under. Oh, I love it. 3,500 United States dollars. So let's have a discussion about the camera. Just to preempt things up from the start, I don't think I'm going to buy this camera due to the fact I don't think it's what I need at this stage. I did preempt it, and that's why I sold my A7R II. At least I got a decent amount of money back for that. I feel sorry for the A7R III owners, though, that have just bought recently, because it's a fairly new camera. I mean, that's why I'm a little bit surprised that this was the first camera that came out. But there's something I'd like to discuss about that, because it may be a smart move for Sony in one respect, because if they brought out a camera that had really good megapixels plus decent video, well, when I say good, up current video specs, then no one may have wanted to buy the next cameras that come out. So perhaps they're preempting this year. And I think, Aaron, what might be going on here is that Sony have done a little bit of a Canon here. And it's unfortunate. It's the first time that I've known them really to have done that. But I think they've done a little bit of Canon. They've held back on the video specs deliberately, because if they gave you a 61 megapixel camera that also did 4K 60p, then no one may have bought the cameras that are upcoming. So I think that's what they've decided to do in this scenario. But like I said, talking from a personal perspective, oh, there's your doggy. Talking from a personal perspective, not having 4K 60p on the camera is a real letdown. I'm not sure what that noise is. I think it's Aaron's gone. Yeah, it was a real letdown, and I'm a bit disappointed about that. If in the fact that you look at what Fuji have got on offer at the moment, you look at what Nikon have got offered at the moment, you look at what Panasonic have got at the moment. Yes, I understand that this is a stills photography camera, but you've got to understand too that I think the future is hybrid. No matter what camera is being sold, I think that the future is hybrid. And I think every camera now should give you the best video features that are sort of current at that time. And now I think the standard should be 4K 60p with higher bit depths. I mean, the bit depths on the Sony are very lacking if you look that they're only 100 megabits per second. So that's one side of it. And I know someone said at the beginning, I think it was MavFan said, here we go with the 4K 60p whinging. But it is a letdown for me personally, and I can only talk about this as a personal thing. I was looking forward to buying the A7R IV because I thought that for sure it would have 4K 60 in it. I thought all the newer cameras that Sony brought out would have 4K 60. That's not the case, though, in this regard. But as a stills camera, we'll look through this in a minute. We'll look at the specs and everything else. For a stills camera, I think this is excellent, and it is an excellent camera if you're dealing with stills. There are some things that you have to consider, though, that due to the megapixel of this camera, 60 megapixels, this has to be treated like a medium format camera in the fact that you can't use this really without a tripod. And I noticed, Kay, if you look at Kai's video this morning, he discussed that and the fact that he said that some of the images were blurry because he wasn't using a tripod at one stage. The thing is, I've used medium format before, and they really do have to be put onto a tripod due to resolution. So I would be very hesitant to be running around with a 60 megapixel camera unless you really up the shutter speed to compensate for that megapixel. You're going to get images that aren't as sharp as, say, using a 24 megapixel camera. So that's something you've got to be aware of. But I'm just a little bit disappointed. So I am a little bit disappointed that this is the first release they've come out with. I think this was the most unneeded camera that Sony could have released. The A7000 and the A7S III are much more needed at this stage. The A7R III is a newer camera. I know the sensor is older, but the camera itself is only 1.5 years old. So it's a little bit of a disappointment. But anyway, it's interesting to see. I noticed Dion just said too, Kai said that it's a medium format killer. Well, I don't think that's true. I think that's a bit of marketing gibberish going on there. If you're dealing with like the Fuji 100 megapixel camera in phase 1 and stuff like that, these big formats, they're still going to be used in studio because there's still a difference in how the size of that sensor alone will give you a better option. I've shot both, so I know what I'm talking about in that regard. If you're dealing with,
I agree with you on that one.
I mean, if you're shooting jewelry, if you're shooting high-end fashion, stuff like that, where you need the ultimate resolution, the format size also has a consideration to play there as well. But that's really the only negative side to this. And I'll get Aaron's opinion in a second before we start to go through the specs and stuff. But that's the negative side to this. I think Sony has dumbed this down deliberately, which is a bit unfortunate. Like I said, it's a bit like a Canon move. But apart from that, it seems like it's very good. I did notice I started to watch a DP review clip come up this morning, and then it disappeared for some reason. I don't know why. They said the rolling shutter is terrible. So that's one thing. Again, I was hoping that they would have had the stacked sensor and there's sort of an updated version of the Sony A9 sensor that you could use the silent shutter. It looks like you can't use the silent shutter. It looks like it's very bad in the rolling shutter area. So it's there, but it looks like it's just not going to be usable that much. So that's another issue. Apart from that, if you're dealing with just stills, fantastic. But what do you think, Aaron?
Yeah, you nailed almost everything I was going to say. And my big thing, too, was the same thing as you said. This was my main talking point, was that they are crippling it just because I guess they're going to be announcing the other more video-centric type cameras. And that's kind of why I like the Fuji cameras, because they don't cripple nothing. Like all the cameras are pretty, even the older cameras, they're all pretty close to the same great resolution or quality, except you just got different body styles and stuff like that. So you never feel like when a new one comes out that you're crippled anything, because you kind of get everything with Fuji, which is kind of cool. And like you said, Canon's been doing that. And now for the first time, like you said, Sony, I see kind of doing that, just because Gerald put up a post on, if Gerald's in here, things were going on here. I don't know who's watching, but if Gerald's here, he put up a post saying, be patient because there's more announcements to come. And that's exactly what I think, is that they crippled it because they want to come out with more video centric and then keep it kind of split it apart, where Fuji just puts it all in all their cameras. So I understand that. And Gilbert, nice to see you here. He also said it's marketing. Exactly. They need to keep selling cameras and all that. And then Oreo put up something on our Facebook group, and he was saying that if he were to upgrade, he did a video too. If he were to upgrade and trade in his A7R III to get the A7R IV, he would still be paying like $2,000 some for it. And it's, for me, I just don't think it's an upgrade at all. I mean, the Sony A7 III is still going to do amazing for years to come, actually, unless you need 60p, 4K 60p because you do video, but then this camera doesn't have that either. So I don't think it's an upgrade. If you got money and you want something faster as far as focusing and continuous shooting and all that type of stuff, and you don't want to go with a medium format because it's a little slower, then I think this would be a good option. Like you said, it's still not a full medium format killer because it's a bigger sensor. Anytime you get bigger sensors, you're just getting, even if it's a little bit more better quality out of it. So I don't think it's a killer, except you just wanted to get into a fast camera with a lot of megapixels. Then I think this is a good option for you if you have the money and you don't have the A7R III. So yeah, in our Facebook, I was putting Z's because it didn't excite me. I was hoping they'd give you a little bit of something that made me kind of like, ooh, that's kind of interesting, but completely not interested at all. But I'm sure it's going to be a good camera, just like the A7R III was. So,
yeah, I mean, the interesting thing too, Aaron, about this is if you're after megapixels, like high megapixels, then obviously this is the camera to get. But if you're looking at the pricing structure of how these are at the moment,
get the A7R III.
Yeah, well, I think the A9 is still a better buy. But if you're not after megapixels, if you just want the ultimate camera, I think the A9 is a better buy for, I think what the A9 now is a fraction cheaper, I think. But it's an interesting scenario. So yes, if you need ultimate megapixels, yes, I'd probably get that. But if you need just the best all-around camera now, probably I'd still potentially get the A9 at this stage. I think it's better value. But anyway, let's start to go through having a look at what this this camera has, because it's interesting that they've changed the design a fraction. But let me open up this page.
And like you said, like if you don't need megapixels, A9 all the way, because it's going to still give you that amazing focus that this new camera has. And it's going to probably get sharper images. As you said, Kai said his images were blurry because of all those megapixels. So depends on what you need. But if you want those megapixels and you don't want to go medium format, then this is the camera for you. But I don't know how many people really need that many megapixels.
Yeah, they do have to understand. And I think you're going to find that people are going to be shocked in the fact that they're going to try and do this all handheld.
Yeah,
and it's not going to work. So they have to be very, very careful about that. But let me present this. So this is I just wanted to show a couple of things. Where were we on this? Let me bring this down. So Sony did release this A7R IV. The announcement was, I think, last night, 12 o'clock my time. It was 10 o'clock if you're in the States. So they did announce that. And just sort of quickly to go over what this has, they're saying it's the world's first full frame 61 megapixel image sensor, 15 stop dynamic range. So it has got very, very good dynamic range. It's got the 5-axis in-body stabilization, the same as what they had with the R3. 10 frames per second shooting with full AE tracking. And they have improved the autofocus as well. So it's got great video autofocus as well now, like it's got the tracking inside of that as well. So that's one good thing too. But it's not as good as the A9 though. It doesn't cover, I think the A9 is 98% of the whole area, where I think this is 75% or something that it covers. Real-time tracking in there, but it does get the new 5.76 million dot EVF, which is fantastic, I believe. I haven't looked through that yet, but I do believe that's fantastic. And Nikon are using that, I believe, also. Or is it Panasonic are using that? Upgraded connectivity. It's using, I think, 5G in connectivity. 4K movie recording. Yes, well, it's the same as what was there previously. There's been no upgrades in that apart from autofocus. Much better weather sealing and dust and moisture resistance as well. And it seemed to be that they have definitely just stop that. It seems to be they've definitely fixed the weather sealing, which was not very good. Yeah, and they've put proper sealing on all the gaskets, like for the doors. If you take the lens off, there's an extra sort of weather sealing around there. The battery grip underneath, where you put the battery in, has also been fixed with weather sealing, so that's also been improved. The camera itself, I think, has been moved about 2 millimeters, and I'll just show that because I think this next one showed it as well. Let me just bring this back. Let me share this application window. This shows a little bit more detail about what was announced, I think, through here. You can see through this side that I mean, it's hard to see, but it does give you the millimeters. You can see now it's 128.9 millimeters there.
Almost 2.
Yeah, it's 2 millimeters. And I think the depth is also a little bit bigger as well. It was 73.7, whereas now it's 77. So they have changed the size compared to what it was. And that's given you a little bit more room in the grip area there. So a lot of people were sort of complaining, saying that you couldn't hold on the camera with the lens on if you had one of the bigger G-Master lenses and stuff like that. So it looks like that has been improved a little bit as well. The dials on the top have also changed. Like they've moved where you change your aperture, the little dial at the back through here. It's now gone up to the top. And they've also put a lock on the EVF, but I never ever in any of the Sony cameras have I changed that EVF by accident. So I'm not sure why.
Diameter knob?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, on the Fuji's it was a big issue with the XH1, and I do knock mine every once in a while. The XT3 they fixed that with the lock as well. So apparently people do hit that, you know, when they're fiddling around with the camera or pulling it out of their bag.
Yeah. This thing here too, like you can see here where the lock now has been put on, and you can see where that new I suppose wheel has been put onto the top as well. So the design is definitely a little bit nicer. Plus the buttons have been made a little bit bigger, so that's also nice as well. So it is a bit better ergonomically than it was before, you know, and that's really good as well. So overall, like the design seems to be that it's been improved. You now have both fast dual card slots, so you're no longer limited with one being fast and one slow. And also they've changed the number so it makes sense. I think one's at the top and number two's down the bottom. So that's done. You can see here how much bigger the buttons are on the back of the camera as well. So they now are much better ergonomically than what they were before.
Is the joystick any different, David?
Well, I think they're saying it's bigger. Yeah, they're saying it's larger than what it was previously. So it's meant to be a little bit better to use, Aaron. New battery grip, obviously. So that's a bit of a bummer because it probably won't fit the other cameras, obviously. So it'll be specific to the new ones. Whether the new A9 II will have that same battery grip, I'm not sure. So, you know, better weather sealing overall, much better it looks like than what it was before. A couple of downsides. The LCD at the back is still that crappy LCD that has been around since 2015,
Yeah,
which certainly could have been improved. The LCD on the back, and it's still just really touch tracking. Sony haven't given anything like what some of the other manufacturers have given us with being able to play with menus, things like that, that's a real disappointment because, yes, you've got a great EVF now, but the LCD particularly could have been upgraded, and they haven't touched that at all. They have released this new digital microphone, but that's enough for me. I mean, I'm not really fussed about that at all. But it looks like I said, so that hasn't changed. You've got your hybrid log gamma, and your log profiles are just the same as before, and things like that. So that's that side of it. Was there another press release here? I just wanted to see if this mentioned anything different about it at all. I'm just no. It's basically all the same stuff. It's just
Did you talk about the what is it, the 5 gigahertz or whatever?
Yes, I mentioned that it has. Yeah, it has 5G for using Wi-Fi. Kai seemed to have a bit of a problem with that this morning, but that also could be the software that just hasn't been updated. APS-C, at least that now gives you a decent crop mode. So if you're doing crop mode on this camera, you get 26.2 megapixel, which is really quite usable. So if you are going to use this out in the field and you want to crop in, well, then it's really good because you do get 26.2 megapixels. But you've also got to understand the second you do that, then obviously that your aperture changes as well. So that's a consideration that you do have to take into account. Whenever you change the crop mode of the camera, basically your aperture is also changing. So if you're using a 1.4 lens, it becomes something like a 1.8 or an f2.
You got to times it by 1.5 or something.
Yeah. Apart from that, yeah, it's got that upgraded wireless connectivity, and that's about it, really. So, you know, it's just let me stop that. It's interesting. I mean, like I said, if you're after resolution, it's a great camera, but I'm not sure this was the first camera that Sony should have released. But now, I did mention before that I think they've done this deliberately to stop people hoping that they'll buy the next camera that comes out that has 4K 60. If this had 4K 60 in it, people may not then have grabbed the next camera that came out, which could be the A7000, which is what I'm tipping is going to be next. And then, you know, people may not have bought that. So I think what Sony have done is they've made it now specific cameras for certain things. But I am, like I said, I am disappointed that they've held that little bit back, a bit Canon sort of issue, and it sort of doesn't sit well with me really in how they've done it, particularly if you're talking about the price that they're paying. Also, you know, I'm a bit surprised that they didn't put in a stacked sensor in that camera. I really thought that they probably could have held off a little bit and put a stacked sensor in, due to the fact then you may have had decent silent shutter, which at the moment you don't have with that camera. And Kai showed that a little bit this morning, and it looked awful. And I noticed that DPR review one, that was what he said before the video disappeared, that he said it was not good, the rolling shutter. But if you're coming from a photography standpoint, this is fantastic. Because Long Rider said, "What is this world coming to, David, hating on Sony?" I'm not hating on it, Long Rider. Thanks you for the donation as well. I'm not hating on it. It's just, like I said, I tell you guys the truth. I just think personally it's a little bit of a disappointment. It's more like an incremental upgrade to me. This is more like going from an A6 to an A6 500. It's not the fireworks that they were saying we were going to get. You know, they were talking about, yeah, they were talking about having images of fireworks, Aaron, and stuff like this, and it's not that.
Well, I was on the internet. I was calling it the A7 Mark III, Mark IV, Mark II, because it seems like it's just like a, what do they do on iPhones? They put the S next to it. It's like something so small. So I think it's more like that. I think they should have redid the menu system on this, redid the screen to at least the, you know, like these. I don't know if you guys like that or not, but I do so many shots from the ground with the half flippy thing like that. Also, shots from above in this manner. So they could have at least did something like that and put 4K 60p in it. And then their next camera, is it going to be just as expensive? Because if it's going to be cheaper, then I don't think that would have hurt this camera, because people are going to buy this for those megapixels, for those who think they need the megapixel. So yeah, it's a little disappointing, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's interesting because of how some people react. I mean, Eric said it also doesn't have X-ray vision, so what the F? Jeff said David is not a landscape photographer. See, this is the thing. I can only give it to you from my perspective, guys, that if this camera is amazing for you, that's fantastic. But like I said, I am not the average phony. I'm talking about Ken now. I'm not the phony. Yeah, I know. I've got Ken stuck in my head. I'm not the average Sony fanboy. I love Sony gear, but if I think something is not right for me, I'm going to tell you as I see it, and that's probably the difference between myself and a lot of reviewers that go to these things that get sent out to New York and wherever they're going to go, that they're going to say good things about the camera no matter what is out there. Because I do think this has some flaws, and I think Sony could have done a little bit better with it. And like I said, I'm a little bit disappointed in the video side of things, particularly. But that's me. And like I've said, that if you're a landscape shooter, this is going to be fantastic, because you've got that resolution there, which is going to be incredible. If you're shooting on
sticks anyways.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly right, and it is going to be fantastic for you. As a fusion photographer who does video and stills, which I believe is the future, this is not the camera for me, due to the fact that the video side of it doesn't give me anything better than what I've already got. So that's why at this stage I don't think I'll be getting this camera. I mean, I might next year. I am still after a high megapixel camera, because I sold my A7R II. But this at this stage just doesn't excite me enough, and I may just wait to see what happens in the coming days with that. So I mean, guys, look, don't be disappointed. I'm not bagging the camera in the fact that it's a bad camera. I just think personally that it could have been better, and that's what I'm trying to say to you here. That if you want resolution, fantastic. It's brilliant. It looks like the autofocus has been improved. It looks like the weather sealing has been improved. But I'm always going to keep it real with you guys. I'm not going to lie to you just to say that this is an amazing Sony camera for me when it's not. And if you don't like that, well, too bad, because I'm going to tell you the truth of how I see things. And if you don't like it, well, you've just got to get over it, because I'm talking to you about how it is for me. And if it's right for you, that's perfect. I noticed Casey gave it a slamming this morning as well. Yeah. I mean, if you haven't seen it, have a look at that as well. I mean, Casey basically gave it a slamming. It was really quite funny. But look, let's talk about the image side of this. The dynamic range is going to be amazing. It's going to give you 15 stops, which is going to be incredible. So it is going to be really great if you, like I said, if you're dealing with landscape and stuff like that. If you're dealing in studio, it's also going to be a really fantastic camera, because you've got that resolution that you can go and retouch and things like that. And even if you're doing product photography. So it possibly will take away some of the medium format sales as well, because you're getting very close in resolution now to what the high-end medium format cameras have. So I knew this was coming. I mean, it was obvious. I talked about this the other day that I knew. Yeah, I mean, I knew it was going to be coming. I just think they may have rushed it a little bit, and they could have put some more, like I said, better features in with like I said, a stack sensor. I still believe that. I love Unbox says David will end up buying it. I might buy it, certainly, but I won't be buying it this year. I still believe that the A7000 is a more needed camera, and I still believe that the A7S III is a more needed camera. But that's just the way it goes. Now, let's look at another thing, because I also wanted to talk about this as well, because I think that we've got another announcement in another week.
That's the one that people probably going to maybe fit most people's needs.
Yeah. I mean, it's talking about this, and it's an SR4. So it's saying, told you it's not all. One more Sony announcement next week. So they're saying that in here, there's going to be another one. They haven't given a date, I don't think, yet. But it looks like Sony are going to stagger this, because remember, they just did the 35 1.8 the other day. So that came out the other day and was announced. Now this week we've got the A7 Mark IV that's also been announced. So then there's going to be another couple. Now, they have said that they believe there's going to be staggered announcements over from between now and September. And if I go to this next page here, I'll just read these things to you. It's saying this is what they're believing is fact. This is Sony Alpha Rumors. They've registered 4 cameras. So now we know we've got 1. And we know for certain that the other camera that's going to come out is going to be a new RX camera. So that's what they're saying is it's definitely going to be announced. So I'm pretty sure that the next one is either going to be an RX, it's going to be the new RX, or they're going to have the A7000 as the next camera that's released or announced, I should say. Now, the A7 III Mark IV, A7R Mark IV, I mean, is going to come out in September. So we're not sure when they announce these, when they'll be released either. But I'm predicting that the next announcement next week will either be an RX camera or it will be a A7000 announcement. So that's what I believe is going to be next. That fits in with that timeline. That leaves another camera that has to be announced this year. I still believe the A9 II is probably the one that's going to come out or be announced after that. And the A7S III looks like it's going to be sometime, possibly by the end of the year announced, but it's going to be released sometime next year. So my prediction is this. The RX next, or the A7000 next week. The next announcement after that in September probably could be the A9 II. And then we're then left with the A7S III, which I think is probably going to be announced at the end of the year they're obviously still having big issues with getting that out. Then it could be things like heating or whatever. The other thing they're saying here, 80% reliable rumor that Sony will announce a new RX camera. I've just discussed that. 80% reliable rumor Sony will announce a new E-mount camera with EVF in the center. Unclear if it's APS-C or full frame. And I think that's going to be the A7000. 60% rumor Sony will announce a new A6500 successor with the new Z battery or the Z battery, slightly larger body, and 60% reliable rumor of new APS-C lenses to be announced alongside the A6400. And they're just saying 50% reliable rumor there might be another high-end camera, and 50% reliable rumor all 4 registered camera models might be announced on July the 17th. Well, that definitely didn't come true. And Sony Alpha certainly didn't predict the A7R IV to come out. And I think, what was the last one that I had here? Nothing. I don't think that matters. Yeah. So we're left in an interesting world at the moment in the Sony side of things. If you're chasing 4K 60p, a lot of people are going to be still very, very frustrated. Not everyone is after that, obviously, and they're going to be quite happy with this release. So there's 2 versions of this. Sony's going to keep the photographers very, very happy with this release. If you're a Fusion or hybrid shooter like I am, you're going to be a little bit upset. And if you're a videographer, you're going to be very upset. So what do you think, Aaron? What are your opinions before we open up the chat? And we'll go through some of these questions and discuss the stuff that's on there.
My opinion is the A7R IV looks like an amazing camera. I love the fact that they built more sealing into it, because that was a little bit, not too much of an issue of mine because nothing happened to my A7 III or nothing, but you feel more confident that the camera's built because you hear a bunch of horror stories. So that was cool. I do love the new button layouts on this thing. I think this camera is really good for if you are a predominant landscape photographer or a product photographer who was thinking about, and maybe you don't get paid a lot of money, or it's not like your main, like you're just really into this, but you're just getting into it, and you were thinking about going with a medium format for those megapixels, not just because of the sensor being larger. Of course, the larger the sensor, the more megapixels you can put on there. So I think this is great for those people where they don't have to spend. I mean, the cheapest GFX Fuji camera now, medium format, it's probably about maybe $1,000 more than this, somewhere around there. And that's not used as like brand new, something like that. It's pretty close, but I'm sure it's more. So if you need more megapixels for those purposes, I think this would be the ultimate camera to get. It's new. It's got everything you need. However, I think the A7R III, it just depends on what you need. I mean, if I were to buy one, like right now, I needed more megapixels than 26 on my XT3. I'd probably just go with the A7R III just because it's going to have good prices, and 42 megapixels is quite a bit, actually. So that's my opinion. It's a great camera. It's good for people who need megapixels and don't want to spend the extra money on a clunky, big, medium format. Boom, done.
Yeah. I mean, look, they've also added IAF in video on this. So the video tracking side and stuff has been really improved. So they've certainly added that. They've also added the tracking from the A9. I mean, it's not going to be as good as the A9, but they've added it. So and I think you'll find that now will be added to all the cameras like the A6400. So that's another thing that's been added as well.
Yeah, if you shoot 24p, which a lot of people do to get more of the filmic look when there's so many more things involved in that. But if you shoot 24p and you have that eye tracking, it could be awesome on a gimbal with really fast glass. So it look kind of cool, when you're moving in and out of a subject and the background's blurry for certain shots or something like that. So that's really cool too. And they do have that, the microphone, if that's something. I didn't quite hear the whole story on the microphone. Apparently it has some electronics within the microphone, if I'm not mistaken, that is going to give you better audio or something. So if you're someone who runs around with a shotgun mic, that might be better than the average shotgun mic because it's made for the camera and all that stuff. So I think it could be good for people who shoot 24p, but I wouldn't buy this camera for video at all. I mean, why would you buy a 61 megapixel camera and spend all that money for there's better options, so yeah, that's my opinion on it. Really,
Did
not
you
too
have,
exciting.
Aaron, have you got face detection on? Because when you put your hands up, it's grabbing your hands. Is it just on the
Yeah,
standard
I
focus
do.
thing?
No, I have my boxes like right here.
Yeah, it's grabbing your
Box.
hands when you put them up. That's all.
Yeah, I always forget.
Let's go through some of the chats anyway. I'd love to see what some people are talking about. So we'll spend this is a totally different show. Next week on Aaron's channel, we'll be back to the normal behind the photo show, but we thought we'd go through this announcement today, seeing it was released. This should have even been on Aaron's channel today, but I thought seeing this was so Sony centric that we'd discuss it here.
Choice.
Yep.
Very good choice.
Unbox Review said crop mode with the 100 to 400 GM lens will be great. And that's the thing. If you have the 100 to 400 millimeter lens and you stick the adapter on that, the crop mode is going to give you great wildlife from this. So that is a very good point. Sam said we asked for 4K 60 P. Let me just move this so I've got this in the middle so it doesn't look like I'm looking away from you all. Sam said, we asked for 4K 60p, not 4,000 camera. What the heck, Sony? And again, you're probably more from the side like me, Sam. But like I said, photographers are going to love it. PhotoMiac said, no real upgrades, just more megapixels, basically. Although they did add things, like I said, the weather sealing, better controls, and better AF. So they have added things. But, yeah, I know it is more of an incremental upgrade. It's not what I'd call a real upgrade. If you see any questions that you want to discuss too, Aaron, just read them out. Mario said, from what I'm hearing, if you're into video, you're disappointed. Still, photographers are drooling. And I think that's true. And like I said, I'm more of the mix now, and Aaron is as well. We're more of coming from what I believe is going to be the future. And when I'm saying the future, I believe that the future is hybrid. I believe the future is going to be stills and video mixed at the same time. And that certainly is now what I'm getting asked to do. Are you getting asked to do more and more of that, Aaron?
No, I mean, it's always been the same with me. It's never gotten any more than it has, but all my camera decisions are always based on it's got to do video and photography. It's not always just as good, but as close as I can find for my budget and all that. So it's very important to me. Maybe that's why this camera doesn't quite get me, because I rather have 4K 60p and stuff like that over 61 megapixels. So yeah, I would always tend toward a camera that has more video and photography features in one package. That's why I love the X-T3 so much and the XH1.
Let's not also forget the bit depths too. I mean, that can't be underrated for videographers. The bit depths on the Sony aren't very good.
Yeah, hopefully the next camera comes out. Now, someone said Ashkin or something. I can't read it from here at my monitor. He's asking, like, someone said that Sony listened to their viewers and they gave us 61 megapixels, which we didn't see anybody asking for, I guess, but also the flippy screen. And what else did he say on there? I think I lost it. 4K 60p. They didn't give us none of that either. So I don't know. Did you hear a lot of people talking about they wanted more megapixels other than the 42 by any chance, David?
No, but it's probably, look, I do believe it's needed. It's certainly the way things are going. And I suppose that Sony had to answer the Canon, I can't remember the model number, but they're 50, I think it's a 50 megapixel camera. So this has answered that side of things. So yeah, so they've answered that, I suppose. And it's certainly, it gives you that ability to use Super 35 mode, that crop mode, which now is usable, which is 26 megapixels. So that's a very good side of this sensor, in the fact that you can use the full 60 megapixels, or you can go down to 26 if you want to, which is great. If you're using something like the GM 24 mil, well, the 1.4, well, then obviously this will become a 35 if you do that. So you've got two focal lengths that you're able to use there. You've just got to remember it goes from that 1.4 to an f2. That's the only side that you've got to remember that you're dealing with. We don't know yet how the noise will be in this, but I'm sure it's going to be well controlled because Sony don't seem to bring out anything where the noise is going to be an issue. So I think that's going to be interesting as well. Andy said, I think they released this camera to buy themselves some time since the A7S III is far out now. And you may be right, but I would have thought the A7000 was the perfect camera that they could have bided some time on with that.
I think that's what should have came out first.
Yeah, and that's what I'm surprised, Aaron, that they didn't release that first.
Yeah.
Sealing looks very similar to what I had in the GH5. So it looks like the weather sealing has been really improved, which is fantastic because like when you're opening up the doors now on the camera, it does look very similar to how it used to look on the GH5. So they've certainly improved that side of things, which is, that is a blessing. And I think you're probably going to find that's going to continue now with all of the cameras as well. Jeff said, yep, sorry, Aaron, you go.
Episode, I ran through the XT3 weather sealing and how good it fared in some rain tests. And yeah, so I'm excited to see the Sony A7R IV finally getting that same type of sealing. So that doesn't leave people, they're doing really good. They're like you said, with the megapixels, they just beat the Canon 50 megapixel one. The weather sealing might be close to the same as Fujifilm. The colors are always gotten better. So yeah, it's getting pretty darn close to Sony being like an all-around camera. So I'm really excited for their next ones that come out this year.
Jeff said, kill the Fuji GFX 50 for sure. Well, it probably is going to hurt that camera. But remember, that still is a different sensor size. So there is a certain thing about the sensor size has a thing here as well. We'd have to see how they both compare against each other. But yeah, it probably would. I mean, if I was sort of just in the market for that 50 megapixel size now, I'd go for the Sony definitely over that.
It's cheaper and faster, and focusing is 100 times better than the Fuji. So yeah, if it's just megapixels, and because I don't really care about sensor sizes necessarily. I mean, I got a crop sensor. I wouldn't go with the GFX right now with that out there. I would absolutely get that over it. So, and then of course the GFX 100 is $10,000, which is way out there in dreamland. So yeah, I think this kind of going to kill a lot of those sales of the Fuji, unless you're just really into medium format size sensors.
Yeah. Also, Brandon says the price point for the R4 to the A9, I'd rather get the A9. It has more capability as a body, I think. And a few people may think like that, Brandon, unless you need resolution. If you don't need resolution and you're in the market for a new camera and you're in the market for more of the high-end camera, not the A7 III line, the A9 is a really good, I know it's still expensive, but it is a really good buy at the moment at the price that they're asking for that camera.
I agree with all that.
Jim said, I believe Sony will release an APS-C camera with global shutter at 30 megapixels. Well, let's hope something like that comes out reasonably soon, Jim. That would be amazing. Mario says, Photomic, no improved ergo, improved processor, A9 focusing, and the megapixel is the least to get excited about. When's the next announcement? Well, we believe it's going to be next week. I haven't got a date yet on that, though. So not sure. Eric said A7 Mark IV is a massive upgrade over the A7 III. Barry just said, good morning. I will get to play with the 600 F4 tomorrow. That'd be fantastic, Barry. I think with this release, Sony A9 still reigns as king. Still Sony's best all-around camera, and I believe that that is still true. If you're dealing with wanting to have silent shutter, 1/32,000th of a second shutter speed, the only thing you lack is a resolution, obviously. But if you're talking about overall, yes, I agree.
And if you're doing weddings and stuff like that, I mean, 61 megapixels at a wedding is that's going to be pretty rough for one, taking thousands of photos and having to support, have cards for that and computer power to do all those thousands of photos at 61 megapixels. So yeah, I think the A9 is definitely best for most people who aren't doing landscape or high definition product photography.
Yep. I mean, I suppose you could shoot permanently in Super 35 mode, but then you lose your wide angle. This is the problem that you're dealing with.
Yeah, trying to get a wide angle. And then why pay that much money if you're going to do that? Get the A9.
Yep. Let's see what else people are saying. Flying High or Low said, I still have the R3. I'll wait for the R5. See, for me, it's a good upgrade. If you've got the A7R II, this is a good upgrade because it is a big jump between what the Sony A7R II is to this new camera. And I think that's amazing. It's an amazing upgrade. Like I said, if you've got the R3, not so much. It's more of an incremental upgrade. I know some people are saying massive, but I don't think it is. But I think it's more an incremental upgrade. But certainly if you've got the A7R II, it certainly is an amazing upgrade if you're dealing with that camera. Unbox Tech said you can crop. It will still give you, you can crop at will with 61. Yes, you can. That's true. At least you get 24 in crop mode. Yeah, you get 26. Audio said, great video autofocusing features, misplaced in the wrong camera. Nivak said, I think that most folks do not actually need the R series cameras, just a subset of Sony shooters. Yeah, and this is the thing that you have to understand. Unless you need megapixels, if you've got to ask if you need megapixels, you probably don't, and you might be better off with the A7 III. And this is how you have to think about this, that, you know, the A7 III is an amazing camera if you don't need megapixels. And like I said, there's certain shooters do need it. Like I said, I've mentioned landscape shooters, if you're doing architecture, or if you're doing high-end studio where you need the retouching and things like that, or jewelry and things like that, megapixels is very, very handy. If you're an event photographer, if you are just, you know, a normal portrait photographer, 24 megapixels is ample, and the A7 III is easily good enough for that. Or if you've got a bit more money to spend, the A9 is the best that there is out there.
Hey, James Bell is asking, what do you think the A9 Mark II megapixel count will be? Do you have any idea? Do you think 30 something, or do you think they'll keep it at 24, or what?
I don't think they'll go too high. It probably will be, I think, around that 30 on megapixel size. I don't think for sports they probably need to go much bigger than that. They're still going to want to make it work extremely fast and not fill the buffer up. And, you know, when you're dealing with sports photographers, they will fill the buffer up. So I think that's going to be an issue as well. So, yeah, I wouldn't expect that to change much at all.
Now, what about this new camera? Is the buffer pretty good on it? Like, I mean, with whatever computer power they're dealing with in the A7R IV, 61 megapixels, does the buffer seem adequate or not that good?
Well, no, it's pretty good, I think. I mean, it seemed to work fairly well, but I did see a couple of reviewers mention this morning that it did fill up when they were shooting, and that, you know, it was having to wait for sort of that to finish. So it was Chelsea. Chelsea actually said yes, she did fill the buffer.
Because my point is the A7 IV Mark II, having it have the same processing power as this perhaps, but only being 32 megapixels or something around there, might gain that speed that can make up for the, you know, for sports photographers. So,
yeah,
you know, it might be something. I think they might go with the 30-ish megapixels on the A9.
And also, you've got to remember too that I think the future with this type of work is to go silent shooting. Particularly with the A9, you know, they may get that up to 30 frames per second or something. No rolling shutter at all, and you know, and I think you're probably going to find that it's still going to be that sort of thing, or that it'll be a more updated stack sensor that gives them that ability to get no rolling shutter at all. So that's probably the future of where the A9 II is going to be. It's going to have to be something substantial in that camera to make people upgrade. I suppose the main thing is that at the moment, the buffer can fill in the A9. I never fill it because I don't shoot enough, but sports photographers probably will. So upping the buffer in that camera particularly would be amazing. But I can't see how they can improve the autofocus much more than what it is at the moment, because it already is so good.
Maybe it'll have 4K 60p for getting awesome video of fast action sports and all that type of stuff.
Yep. Really appreciate it too, guys. If you could give us a thumbs up, it does make a difference for the channel. So I would love that if you could do that for us. Unbox Tech Review said, anyone getting excited about the new Sony microphone they announced with this camera? I've only glanced at it. It doesn't really excite me much at all for what I use. But others in the chat might be able to talk about that. Alex said, couldn't agree more. The A9 is a much better buy right now. Also $1,000 cheaper than the R4 in the UK. See, that's a lot of money. If you can get the A9 for £1,000 cheaper than the R4, you know, that's then getting you on the, like, you can go and get a 24 or something like that, or, you know, a Tamron lens with it or something, or a good lens. It's a lot of money to save. Haven't heard if they've improved the IBIS. No one's mentioned that at all at this stage. So it's probably the same as what it was before.
Hey, I like what you said, David. If you have to ask if you need more megapixels, then you probably don't. So, yeah, I think the A9 is the ticket right here.
Oh, good point too. Unbox Tech Reviews, and I forgot about this, that you can now change the focus box to red or white now, which is fantastic.
Oh, yeah. I saw that. That was one of my only gripes with the A7 III is just that. I mean, it's not like a deal breaker by any means, but it was just so frustrating. And I saw Jason, I forget his name, was changing that on a live video of his. So finally, right?
Yeah, I know it's, and I'm hoping Sony look after your users, give that to us. That should just be a firmware upgrade. There's no
Easy.
reason why you should not give that to your users. So please drop that down in firmware upgrades to your users now. It's probably not going to happen, but they should. They really should give that to their users.
Oreo was saying he hopes they do, and I told him don't hold his breath because we need him alive, because I don't think they're going to do it. They're going to make you buy the new camera for that stupid little feature that everybody would like to have, you know?
Yeah, I think you're probably right, but they should. It should be something that we should get. Steve Harris said, what an incredible camera release from Sony. So tempted to move from Nikon to Sony. Long Rider said, this camera would be a killer sports and wildlife camera. In crop mode, it's 27 megapixels and the reach of a crop camera. That's very true, Long Rider.
Talk about the autofocus points in crop mode. I got lost in all the details because when you put it in crop mode, you get, I forget how many points of autofocus, which would be really good.
It's probably it'll probably do the same as the A9. It's probably then around full coverage, I would say, because the sensor then becomes smaller. Pretty crazy. The difference between the A9 and the A9, I think, covers 98% of the sensor, which is almost everything. There's more obviously autofocus points. But it's still a big upgrade from what was there previously. Michael said, and I know Michael's pre-ordered it, I have the R3 and I love it, but it's slow for me coming from the A9, and I totally disagree. This is a great, and I totally disagree. This is a great camera if it has the speed on the AF and processor side. 26 megapixels, 61 megapixels, I love it. Come home, A7R IV. I know Michael ordered it as well, so that's.
So Michael's basically saying that he loves the speed of the A9, but he loves the resolution of the A7R IV. So this is kind of combining the two, which is a pretty good point. If you like both of those cameras, now it sounds pretty good.
Hart said the doors on the side look more sturdy. Yes, they've changed that, so you haven't got that clip anymore. It looks more like what you get in typical digital SLRs. Jeff said, Aaron was so proud of the Fuji weather sealing. Now we are even.
Yeah, it's true. It's like, because the Sonys, you always hear, I've heard so many bad people having just a couple of raindrops. And I'm not they might be exaggerating, but I've heard so many people say that. And it's like, man, they just a raindrop, and they could be trolls, who knows? But it just does seem like they've had issues with that. And now it's confident that I don't think it would ever happen.
What else have we got? Finally got 4K 60. I said here. Sanj said, this is the best wildlife beast. It blows the Nikon D850 and Canon 5D Mark IV, Z7 and SR1 out of the water, I suppose he's saying.
That animal eye focused thing, right?
Yes, yeah, we'll have that. So yeah.
Yeah, the other cameras don't have that, correct? Am I wrong?
No. So it doesn't have it. That Sony will be the only one, I think, that has the animal IF. I think. Really good. Dion said he used to change it all the time, so he did have an issue with that exposure compensation. Yeah, I've never had an issue with that, but it must be the way I hold the camera, I suppose.
Are we talking about the exposure compensation or the EVF?
No, it's the exposure compensation, because it's. I haven't got a camera in here. Oh, yes, I have. Because they're sitting there. On the camera, I think what's happening. See, I don't hold my hand near that. I'm always pressing the A, because I'm using back button focus. I'm always pressing the A on button, which is my back button focus. But I suppose if you hold your hand up there, you've got the possibility to move your exposure compensation dial. But I never ever move that because my hand is never anywhere near that, and I never use aperture anyway, so I'm never even using it, but my hand is always basically on the AE on button, so I don't have that issue with.
I thought you were talking about that. The EVF diopter changing that.
No, the new one's got a lock button in it.
Yeah, I've never had that issue on my cameras.
Jeff said, I think it will be at least 2 years before Nikon get their hands on this new sensor. Well, like I said, there is rumors they're going to get the new A9 sensor, but they won't do that until Sony release the A9 II, I would think. Joe Rose said, I'm still kind of hoping they give us the ability to change the focus point color to previous cameras. And now I'm with you, J. Rowe, too, that Sony should do that, whether we get it or not. let's wait and see. It'll be interesting to see if that happens in the new A9 update that's meant to be coming out very soon. That would be the test, I think, because I think if Sony were going to add that, it would go into the A9 first. So if we don't see it in the A9 in the version 6 firmware, I don't think we're going to see that color change at all. Such said,
what camera do you think they're going to finally change that ancient screen, David?
well, I think I agree with Sashi because he said the LCD will be better for the A7S3, and I think that's probably right.
Yeah,
because it's not good if you compare it to, say, the Nikon screens and stuff. It's not, the Z series. It's not a good screen anymore. It's very dated technology. The screen on the back. Brett said the new battery grip is designed for the A9 too. Yeah, probably will have that same one as well. Eric, weatherless tethering. Yeah, that looked like it was reasonably good when I saw that working this morning. So that certainly could be a good thing. James says his exposure compensation wheel gets bumped all the time when hiking. I like it. Frank said kids talking live about Christmas presents that disappoint them. They don't realise how spoiled they are. As for me, it's a great camera and buries many others down deep.
No, it's a great camera. We never said it wasn't a great camera. It's a really great camera. If you need megapixels and you don't need 4K 60p basically, and if you have an A7R III and don't need more megapixels, so it's kind of like an incremental upgrade in the fact that there's no wow features except 61 megapixels. But if you're not into that, then it's not like such a wow camera for some people, but it's definitely a great camera.
Casper said this new camera is to bring new photographers into the fold. They already have our money. I think it'll sell well. That's for sure. What else have we got? Are you guys kidding? From a photography standpoint, this camera is unbeatable. It certainly is a nice camera. If you need resolution, I agree.
Yeah, exactly.
What else? Gilbert says, great point, Casper. That's talking to Casper. Jeff said David is not a landscape photographer. Yeah, and it's not only that I'm not a landscape photographer, but I am a hybrid shooter. That's what you have to understand when I'm talking to you from this point of view. I'm talking from my point of view of shooting video and stills at the same time. This camera is not what I was hoping for. So that it's just that point of the thing. And like Haas says, David has always been neutral, and I will always tell you as I see it. I'm certainly not going to say everything's rosy for me if it's not. And there's people will do that, but that's not me. And, if that's what you're after, you shouldn't be following me because it's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you the truth from the way that I see it. I'm not that typical Sony fanboy that is going to give praise to every single thing that comes out and every feature. It's just not going to work that way for me. Fantastic stills photography camera, yes, but it's certainly not what I was personally after because it's lacking some things.
I think if you're going to go if you're a landscape photographer, this could be really good, especially as I've already said, that weather sealing and the 61 megapixels. It could be really, really, really good for, and the price, you don't have to go to medium format. So as someone said about landscapes, I agree that I think this is probably one of the best landscape cameras out, like when this comes out. So yeah, I think it's good for that. Yeah,
it's unbeatable. If you're dealing with landscape, that side of stuff, it is unbeatable. There's no doubt about it. For its size, the ergonomics, the lenses now that Sony have got out there that are available for it, it's unbeatable in that space. Yeah. It's probably also unbeatable if you're dealing, like I said, with architecture, and also it's unbeatable if you're dealing with high-end fashion. If you wanted to do retouching, it's also unbeatable in that regards as well. It's just not an unbeatable fusion camera. There's better options out there at the moment.
Yep.
What else have we got? Michael said, yes, I'm getting it for sure. I think this is the camera I've always wanted, 4K 60p, but I will get that with the A7S III. Yep. Johnson City Aerial Photography said, I predict the A9's latest firmware this summer may get this video version of real-time tracking and IAF. Yeah, it's going to be interesting what we get with the A9 tracking. It really is going to be great. And like I said, I'm hoping Sony surprises and give us that changing of the focus color, but I don't think we'll get that. But it is going to be interesting to see whether we get the eye tracking in video and stuff like that. Can't wait to see what we get with that. The longer it takes, the better, it might be for us. So don't hurry up.
Here's something Anthony Mack says, I don't need the resolution, but the A7R IV will allow me to crop and take fewer lenses. And now I always kind of contemplated, should I get a camera with more megapixels for that reason? Because I'm a minimalist. I take very few gear with me, and I don't own so much gear and all that. So that's one thing I always kind of realized, that you could take a 24-70, let's say, and then you've got that extra reach and all that stuff. The other thing is, if you're doing a full body shot of, let's say, a model and you're posing her and maybe it's windy and the hair's blowing right, or you're using a fan to blow the hair or something like that, and you're taking shot of full body, and then you say, okay, let's go in for tighter shots, and you go in tighter, and you're doing kind of the same thing to have two different perspectives of the shot for whatever project you're doing. And then you get back and you're looking at all the photos and you notice there's a full body shot. Ooh, that one looks great. And then you go through the close-ups and there's just one of those, the look, the hair blew just perfect and her expression is perfect, but it's on the full body shot. You can easily, with 61 megapixels, crop that in. I mean, even more than twice, and still have plenty of resolution to use that as a medium shot for a magazine or something. So that's something that's kind of really always interests me with megapixels, is you could take a full body shot and crop in for that one shot that looks better than the waist up type medium shots and still use it. So that is a good point.
I'm laughing because Mike said, I can see the t-shirt now. I'm not the phony. That's because I said phony instead of Sony. I was still in my Ken mode. Kevin said, that's why I like watching you, David. You always keep it 100%. And I've told you, I'll always tell you the truth. Huss said, David, this is exactly what I said in the Facebook group, that you always call out Sony if you are not going in the right direction. Not sure why. We can't be disappointed at Sony. And this is the thing, guys. You've got to understand that it's not all rosy all the time. And this is what you have to understand. It might be for you, and that's fantastic. Like Michael, it's rosy for Michael. This fits Michael perfectly, and he's thrilled to bits and he can't wait to get it. I know Gerald was the same. Gerald was talking about that too in our photography and videography school, that he is wrapped in this as well. And that's fantastic because that's suiting their needs. It just doesn't suit my need, and I'm talking about this from my perspective. I'm not bagging the camera that it's a terrible release. It's just not the right release for me, and that's what you have to understand, that these things aren't right for everyone. I think there's other better options out there. Am I going to switch? No. But if they don't release something by the end of the year, I might buy something other than Sony. I might buy a Fuji, or I might buy a Nikon or something. If they don't give me 4K 60 by the end of the year, I might do something else for that feature. You can only wait so long. At this stage, I'm just waiting to see what they release in these next few cameras before I decide what to do. But I am after a camera that can do stills and 4K 60 at the same time. So,
Fuji film makes
yeah, exactly, Aaron. What else have we got? Daniel said, waiting for the full frame Foveon. Unbox said, this camera will put GM lenses to the test. It will. But that's one of the beauty, that's one of the great things about that I believe, like the 135 is rated to 100 megapixels. So if you've got the latest lenses, it certainly will be okay. But if you've got some of the older ones, it's going to be interesting to see how the 70 to 200 goes and the 24-70 goes on this sensor, whether it's out resolved by the sensor. That will actually be interesting.
Oreo commented there, and yep, I agree with you, Oreo.
Mark said, here we go, David is buying again. Get the roses for the wife. I'm certainly not buying it yet. I may get this next year, though. I'm waiting to see what Sony release in these next 3 cameras before I make a decision about what I want to do.
But you said this before, and then you put up a special video unannounced.
Yeah,
Here's what I got, and you got your Santa's hat on and stuff, and you bring out the box.
I know. But the thing this time, I think all these cameras are going to be released very close to one another, Aaron. So if I buy the A7R IV, then Kerry is going to just kill me if I go out and buy an A7S III or an A7000. So I'm waiting. I really only need one more camera at the moment. And I've got to be realistic. No, I've got to be realistic that I've got an A7 III, I've got an A9, and I've got an A6-400. I only need one more camera at this stage, so I'm going to be selective in what I choose, and I want it to meet my needs. So if I go out and buy an A7R IV, I'm then not going to get an A7S III that I know is probably going to be announced next week, and I'll be shattered. Yeah.
So 4K 60p, higher bit depths and all that stuff.
Yeah. So I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait to see. The future for me is definitely in shooting 4K 60 and higher bit rates. That is definitely the future for the way that my business is growing with shooting stills. So I need to look at it from that aspect. It's not in the high megapixel race, and that's why I've got to be careful about what I purchased. Look, if that had 4K 60 in it, and then I could have used the whole 60 megapixels plus the 24 in crop mode, plus it gave me 4K 60, I might have jumped it. I might have jumped in and got it, but it's just not right for me at this stage.
Why they didn't do it, because they want people to buy their other camera that's going to maybe have that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Eindebrand said, David, you said this. I did say that about the A6-400, and I'm totally honest about that. Eindebrand, I was bagging that camera, and now I love it.
That's exactly the one I was telling you about. You brought the box out on the next day.
Yep, I'm not going to lie to you. I did say that. I did say that completely. I bagged that because of IBIS. That was the main reason why I bagged that camera, because of that. And that's true. I think the color science has also improved, and we'll have to wait and see that to see how it goes. Obade says, David, I know you will pre-order this camera, and we know you're I am a Sony fanboy, I admit it. It's just that I'm not a blind Sony fanboy. I'll just say it as I see it.
That's very important.
Elliot says, I don't think IBIS will resolve the shakiness. Now, look, it will help. I mean, having your IBIS on the camera will help, but at 60 megapixels, you have to understand that any slight movement at all is going to degrade your quality, the sharpness of that image. Kai talked about it this morning. It's a definite thing that you have to think about. If you're shooting 60 megapixels, it would be better to shoot on a tripod, that's for sure.
And also lenses, you can't just go out and necessarily buy the less than sharp lenses because you want to resolve all that. Like, what do you think that one of my favorite lenses on the Sony A7 III was the Tamron 28-75. Now, what do you guys think that would look like on a 61 megapixel sensor, David?
Yeah,
any idea?
No, I don't. It's going to be interesting to see how that resolves in that. It resolves well on the A7R III. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes on that, isn't it? We'll have to wait for testing on that. Hip Hop said, I saw my A7R III a few days ago. Well, that was a good move. You're like me, you sold it. I sold mine a couple of weeks ago. Looking to buy the A9. Should I do it considering the specs of the A7R IV? It all depends on what you want to shoot, Hip Hop. If you don't need the resolution, I'll go for the A9. If you need the resolution, then obviously go for the A7R IV. What else? Stack sensor is only for the A9. Yep, they probably are going to keep that for the A9, unfortunately. Michael said, I can understand this camera isn't for everyone, but it's for me, David. Laugh out loud. Let you use mine and hook you. I'll be able to use yours when I see you in February, Michael.
And Fia Zero says, Zio says, now I can buy the A7R III, and that's true. Now that this one's out, everybody's going to be dumping their, not everybody, but a lot of people are going to be dumping their A7R III, so you're going to be able to get a really good price now. I mean, I'm sure, do they ever lower the prices with Sony? But if not, you could probably buy a good used one. And I know if you go to B&H and go to their used section, they give it kind of like a rating on how banged up it is, basically. And you can easily go over there and find really good ones with a rating of 9. Sometimes they have just open boxes. And since this new camera is going to come out, so yeah, you're going to be able to get an A7R III for a pretty good price, I believe.
Yeah, well, I think they're under $2,000 now, some of them, for the used ones, which is getting a really good price. So you will
afford this, right?
Yeah, I mean, now that this is released, that's why I'm so glad I've sold mine. I mean, now that they're released, in the future, there's going to be a lot of A7R IIIs in the marketplace, and you're going to get a really, if you are waiting to get an R3, hang out a little bit because they are already on special, but you're going to get some great used ones in the coming weeks.
Yeah, that's why I felt a little bad for Oreo, because I think he was contemplating this A7R IV, but then he did the math with the value of the A7R III. It's just going to tank really fast. So, that one guy that said he sold it last week was a really good idea.
Jay says, this camera does so many things right. This camera is not meant to excite video enthusiasts. It's an amazing Sony camera. If you're a video shooter, models, or wedding photographer, then no wildlife. He said, yes. Johnson City said, can't wait for the A9 II, just so our A9 prices come down to about 2,100 to 2,300 and I can get one. I mean, if the A9 does come down to ridiculously cheap prices, I might buy another A9 just as a backup. I would love another A9, that's for sure. Any questions you can see that interest you, Aaron?
No. I've been reading.
Jay said, having a sensor with such a high 60 megapixel makes it harder to do video versus camera with a 30 to 40 megapixel being able to do 4K easily. Yeah, I'm not sure how that all works, but it may be an issue. It shouldn't have been an issue, though, if you were shooting Super 35, though. That would have been perfect, I would have thought, to shoot Super 35 4K 60. Oreo said, I wonder... Yep, you go.
That was kind of the cool thing too about it, because it does have the crop mode. If you are going to do a wedding event, if you're someone that wants to do wedding, but you do landscapes also type of thing, maybe putting it in crop mode will save you a lot of space, speed things up for weddings if you do those here and there, instead of trying to shoot it with 61 megapixels. I don't know if that's a good option or not, but it might be interesting. And then when you go out and do your photos that you require all the megapixels, then you can do that. Or just if you're going to do a shot for a bride and groom and you're shooting all like not the real, like the moments that are really necessary to print or blow up, 24 crop mode. And then when you're doing a portrait, if they want to blow it up really large, just switch it into 61 megapixels. That might be kind of a cool option. Yeah,
exactly. Bold predictions. Unbox said bold predictions. A7S3 will have 8K. Woohoo. What else have we got down here? We're nearly down the bottom, which is good because we've just been on for over an hour. Mick said, yeah, you go.
Read my super chat.
Sorry, what was that, Aaron?
Jason is asking, can you please read my super chat?
Oh, I didn't even see one.
Yeah, I don't see it either.
Who was that?
There it is. Jason, it's up at the top. Jason.
Sorry, Jason.
N.
Yeah, Jason said no 4K 60p to protect their upcoming A7S line. Sorry, Jason, I didn't even see that coming up. Yeah, you're right. And I think that's probably what they've done. It's like we discussed early on. I think the marketing move here from Sony is that they want to make sure that you go and buy the A7000 or the A7S, what's released next. If they put 4K 60 into this camera, people may not have then bought the next camera that's down the line. So you're probably right in that regard. So sorry, Jason, I didn't see that pop up at all. Dion, by the way, too, said Sony has all their lenses that can do much more than 42 megapixels, so they need a camera that can prove how good the lenses are. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how the 135 does on that, on the new A7 Mark IV. That's going to be pretty incredible.
That's what Sony said a while ago when they made the G Masters, that they're making lenses for the future, and I guess the future's here with the 61 megapixel, correct?
Yep. 36 megapixels is needed for 8K, we're saying there. Sandra's saying the A9 will have 36 megapixel for the new A9 II sensor, and that gives you the 8K as well.
True.
What else have we got? The audio interface looks more appealing than the microphone. The new mic looks a bummer. All it offers is AD converter, which is outside the camera. Yeah, I don't know if that interests me at all. I'm going to have to look at that. I haven't even looked at it yet, to be honest. All I looked at was the release. So I'll have to see what people are saying about that and stuff. So it'll be interesting. I
don't even use shotgun mics, really. I always use lav mics and stuff. So it's something that doesn't interest me. But what did they say about that? Someone just mentioned about the unit that goes on top. Is it a new unit or did they do something to the old unit? What do you call it?
That's what I look like. It looks similar to the old one when I looked at it quickly, but I haven't looked at it enough yet to see how it works. So I'll have to look at that. I might talk about that on Friday's show.
Yeah. Oh, here it is. It looks like the old one, so I don't quite get it, but
What else? Michael said in crop mode, it covers a full sensor. That's talking about the autofocus. Yes. GH6 will be out soon. Not good for Sony at the moment. Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see what Panasonic release in that camera. That's for sure. Cliff said another nice new feature is that you can save your settings to SD card. Yeah, that's a great feature. So at least if they do what they did last time, where you lost everything when you upgraded the firmware, that won't happen. So that is a good thing, Cliff. That's for sure. What else have we got? Sean said, do you guys think that being that they have skipped the A7S Mark III, do you think Sony would release a new line A5 or A8 to combine the A7 III and the A7S III to include a flip screen for video? I don't know. Look, I'm not sure that Sony are going to do the flip screen. I mean, they may in the A6000 or the A7000 may have that. I hope they don't release an A5 because I don't want to see a dumbed down version of the A7 III. I'd prefer them to be now releasing cameras above that side of it. I think the A7 III is as good as it gets down there.
Well, they said it was the entry-level camera, so it shouldn't. I mean, why would they go below that unless they'd be contradicting themselves?
Yeah. I mean, we don't know. The A7S III may not exist anymore, and that might be what you're saying. It might just end up being an A8, or it might be an A9S. We don't know what Sony are thinking in that regard. The A7S III may never eventuate. That could be what it is. When I say may never eventuate, it might not be called the A7S III. It could be called, it could be called A8 or an A9S or something. We don't know yet. So that's going to be interesting to see what happened about that.
That's interesting.
Casper said that one camera guy was going through full detox from something in his video. I'm not sure what that means. I haven't seen that video. I feel like Sony really pay attention to people because they fix many things. Yep.
They did.
Sony will release a revised firmware with digital voice assistant. Stephen Gray said, time to buy an A7R cheap. It will be cheap. So that's one good thing. If you're after an R2, it's going to be great.
Robert is saying that a Sony representative, I think, told him that the G Master line of lenses are rated up to 70 megapixels.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, there you go. So we've got a bit more yet that they can go up to. Michael says, David, but I will be keeping my A9, and I'm sure you will. There's no way I'll be getting rid of my A9, that's for sure.
Good night, Gilbert.
Yeah, good night, Gilbert. So Dara too said Sony should make the megapixel option like Canon for small RAW. I know. Why don't Sony do that? Honestly, I mean, if you've got a 60 megapixel camera, why don't they give you a small and medium RAW option and large option? And I don't understand it.
I was thinking about that and forgot to mention it. I don't either, or at least DNG or those other formats to kind of compress it, and they could do so many options in the cameras. But yeah, I don't know why they don't do that. That would be such an amazing feature. Thanks
for the thumbs up too, guys, because we got 112 thumbs up. So thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate that. What else have we got? Lomar says A7S III 4K 60 flip screen, A7R 60 megapixels. Each camera have their role. The Hip Brannick said, I'm so excited for this release. See, some are. I mean, some are really excited about it, and I'm happy for you guys. I will keep using my A7R II. I might sell my EOS R for this one. Carl said, I like this new A7R Mark IV. I want the A7R Mark IV. That's Carl as well. Steve said, post video, will there be a summary provided in regard to the truth, good, bad, of the Sony A7R IV to inform customers? Not sure. I mean, I might wait until I see if I can get one or something before I could do that. You see anything you like, Aaron?
Well, Oreo said that small RAW requires live computations, and probably Sony wants to save that CPU power for the tracking features. That could be possible. It's not as easy as just giving us a smaller RAW. Maybe there is something to that.
Oreo said, keep in mind that if you shoot in APS-C mode, cropping the frame itself is still a large frame. You are just enlarging a portion, so the motion blur issues remain. Yeah. Iron Brown said, once again, we have heard all of what you were saying with the A6400 release. You behave yourself, Iron Brown. I'm not buying it. Not yet, anyway.
Nobody believes you.
Yeah, I know. Michael said, yes, sir, 60 megapixel. You can hear 4 different crops with one shot if you are creative and like cropping. Jim said, Kerry, did you just hear David? New gear. I know. I spoke to her last night and said, I was going to get up at 12 o'clock to look at what Sony releasing, and she rolled her eyes.
That's too funny. I think I just seen her behind you in that dark room there. He's getting ready to get you after the show.
I love it. Let's see if we can get to the end of these so we can call it a day. I need to go and get my New York accent. I need to go and get my coffee. Your
coffee? You're going to enjoy your coffee down by the park?
James said, what does 4K 60 get you? Just slow motion. Yes. It enables me. I love shooting in 4K because the cameras give their best results at 4K, James.
Yeah, so, image quality and stuff.
And then you can downsample to 1080p. The problem is when I'm doing wedding videos and stuff like that, I love to shoot them in slow motion so that I can slow them down and you get that graceful look and it's beautiful. But I can't do that in the Sony cameras at the moment because if I go into 4K, I can only shoot at 30p. So it's a problem.
Or just shoot 1920 by 1080 at 4K. But, like he was saying, he wants that 4K so you can do a whole bunch of different stuff to that 4K in post, like slow down, crop in if you want, and the image looks better.
Cropping is huge for me because I'm shooting these weddings on my own, doing the Fusion side of things. Being able to crop gives you the look of you've got multiple cameras. And that's an amazing feature that I use all the time. The crop and the slowing down is massive to me. That's why I'm so looking forward to a 4K 60 camera.
When I had the Panasonic cameras with 4K 60p, I would film. I filmed this one beautiful location, and there's bridges and stuff. And I did a wide shot on everything in 4K. And then when I did it in post, if that shot looked similar to another one, or I felt like I needed to get closer on this clip than the other one, you could just crop in and retain the detail. And it looks like I had 2 camera shots. You didn't even know it was the same place really, because I just did a detail shot. So 4K 60p is quite usable.
I'm laughing at Michael because he's bagging us. He said, David, we love you and Aaron, man. You guys don't have to explain why you guys have bad taste. It's not you. It's not for you, really. I get it.
Yeah, not for me. I said I like the camera, especially for landscapes.
Thomas said it's probably impossible to at that data rate to release a top video camera with a 61 megapixel camera. Cliff said, I'm more interested in the new body features like that in the A7 Mark IV. Kai had a bad tripod. I know, I could see it moving. He had the new, what is it? What's the one that's on Kickstarter?
The Peak Design one?
Yeah, and I'm sure I saw it moving in a couple of spots. It looks so fragile, that tripod.
Well, Tony Northrup was saying it's the ball head or whatever on there that you have to click it tight or something. He even pinched himself or something ridiculous like that. But some people were saying that the ball head is a little wobbly or something. I don't know if they're not doing it right, but that's too funny, right?
Yeah, I know. I'm sure I saw it move. It just doesn't look that good to me, honestly. Michael said, David, I'll try to tempt David by hyping him up. David, it's a must, laugh out loud, has to have more megapixels. And then David, I'm in. Oh, you guys are going to get me in trouble, seriously. There is growth inside your coffee cup. I know I haven't hardly drank it. No, look at it. It's because it's gone dry.
I drank mine. Look, I've even forgot. I was drinking in Sweden today. Yeah. This is behind the photo, but it's on a different schedule, so I didn't really kind of talk about that. But yeah, I drank all mine while David was talking in the first round.
It looks terrible because it's gone dry on the edges. Brett said A7R IV shoots in 4K downsamples to 4. Yeah, it'll be the same as the A6400 and the A7 III. Oreo said, have you seen the GoPro gimbal posted by Gerald? It will allow you to use 4K 50 on the Osmo Action and have the footage stabilized. No, I haven't seen that yet. I'll have to check that out, Oreo. Casper said Fuji is dead. I think he's having a go at you, Aaron.
Oh, no, I still use mine. It's great.
Where are we? We're nearly down. Yeah, Peak Design. Yeah, I know. It looks like it just doesn't. That tripod just does not interest me at all. It doesn't look like it's stable at all to me. What else? Michael said, oh no, you're getting Casper hyped up, Photo Miak. Oh, they're arguing between each other already. Can't wait to rent it when it comes out in September. You already know I'm making a video about it. That's Photo Miak said. Jim said, I would believe if in good shape, you could get a US 24 for, I'm not sure what camera that was. There's going to be some great A7R IIIs up for sale though. If you're in the market for a good one, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Last couple before we finished. Kelb said the A7R III is 600 off on sale here in Toronto. I'm able to get an additional 20% off from that price. Wow. Worth buying over the A7R IV. Look, it just depends, Kelb. Look, if you have the money, I would buy the A7R IV if you were in that market for a high resolution camera, because it's going to last you more years, much better focus, with better features. So if you had the money, I'd definitely buy the R4. If you want to save a bit of money, there's nothing wrong with the R3 either. So it just depends on what you'd like to, how much you'd like to spend, and if you'd like to buy another lens. I mean, what you save in that buying the R3, you could also buy a great G Master lens. So
and that's exactly what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Just what you said right there. That's perfect.
All right, so we'll summarize there before we finish. Look, in summary, just myself, great camera if it's for photography, really good if you're in for landscape, if you're in it for doing architecture, if you are in it for doing high-end retouching, amazing camera. If you're in it for like me and you're in it for fusion or doing a hybrid camera, my suggestion at this stage is wait. Wait to see what Sony announce in the coming weeks. There's an announcement next week, I believe, and there's also going to be announcements up till September. So I would probably wait and see what happens. In no way are we bagging the camera. We're just saying that it's not right for what we would like to have at this stage and use. I'm not saying I won't buy it. I might. I'm certainly not going to put it on pre-order, but I may get it next year when I've got this next camera that I'm waiting for that will give me hopefully 4K 60. Do you want to summarize anything, Aaron?
Summarize for me is if you were thinking about going with a medium format just to get more megapixels, get the A7R IV. It's going to be amazing for landscape. It's cheaper than the medium format. It's lighter. It's faster. It's a better camera in my personal buying decision. If I was going to go to medium format just for megapixels, not necessarily for the big thing. So the big frame. So for me, yeah, I think it's a great camera for especially landscapes. I think it's quite exciting for that. And that's about it, David.
So this show will be on Aaron's channel next week, back to its usual format of just having an open format of talking about camera issues and gear and everything open. So we'll be back on then. I will be back on Friday, my time, Thursday, US time and Europe time for the Sony Alpha News and Rumors, where we might have more of a discussion about this, and we might also talk about the microphone or any other issues, or perhaps what may be coming up in the next announcement. So apart from that, I'm off to go and get my coffee, and we'll see you all in the next show. So catch you, Aaron. Thanks so much for another really interesting show. Leave your comments down below if you have any questions, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Aaron will be sharing this on his channel as well, so we will be downloading it and sharing it as well. So obviously subscribe to Aaron's channel too, because we'll be on his channel next week. Catch you later, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for stopping by. Love the talk. Love the chat. See you later.